Say what? There's no jumping in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth? But it's an open world game. It's 2024. That's like the most basic feature you can add in a video game. I haven't heard this complaint yet, but I can imagine this is what people are going to say after they've played Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Now, it's possible that I could be wrong, but based on everything I've seen of Rebirth, I have not seen anyone jump while walking around the field except while riding a black chocobo. There only appear to be instances of characters jumping automatically when nearing the edge of the cliff, but jumping doesn't appear to be mapped to any particular button on the controller. Now, maybe you'll unlock the ability to jump later in the game, and if it ends up playing a significant role in the game, then you can come back to this video and roast me in the comments. But I don't think that's going to be the case. So the question is, does it need a jump button? Simply, no. The Final Fantasy franchise is no stranger to complaints about jumping. Remember Final Fantasy XIII? Now, there were legitimate complaints about that game as a whole, but there were also a lot of complaints that were grasping at straws with that one. One of them was that it didn't have a jump button. All other modern games at the time apparently had the ability to jump. Therefore, game is bad because you can't jump. So in Final Fantasy XIII-2, we got jumping. And did it add much to the game? Not really. So the question that we then need to ask is, what is jumping? And how does it impact gameplay? Well, quite simply, it's a mechanic just like any other mechanic, like attacking, using limit breaks, or dodge rolling. All of those play a role in the gameplay. So what role would jumping play if they added it in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth? Well, it would allow you to more quickly traverse parts of the environment that are elevated, and if you thought that would have relevant use in an open world game, you'd be correct. But what they did is actually even better. You see here? When Cloud approaches a ledge that would normally be high enough for a character to jump over, instead, he just automatically climbs over it. This is actually even better than a jump button because it accomplishes the same purpose that jumping would, but is even more convenient because it happens automatically. Because, let's face it, this isn't the type of game where shit's gonna be flying out of nowhere and you have to dodge things by jumping, or a game where the levels are gonna have a bunch of pits that would kill you if you don't jump over them. This isn't Mario, or even Kingdom Hearts with all of its aerial combos for that matter. Which brings me to the next topic, aerial combat. One of the takeaways that people had after playing Final Fantasy VII Remake was that they hoped that aerial combat would be improved in Rebirth. And after Intermission released, everybody thought that because Yuffie's playstyle incorporated more aerial combat, that this meant that Rebirth would incorporate more aerial combat for the characters. And sure, there might be some improvements, but just about every facet of the game looks to be improved in Rebirth, so there might be some slight improvements to the aerial combat, but not in the way that you probably think. You see, Final Fantasy VII Remake is still an RPG, or really I like to replace the term RPG with command game, because that's what you really do in these games, and more specifically, it's something like an action command game. One of the hallmarks of a command game is the party. If you could jump with any character and perform all kinds of crazy aerial combos, why would I ever switch to Barret? I'll just play as Cloud and kick the crap out of things with his sword for enemies that are out of reach. I would never even need to switch to Barret, like, literally ever. And so you might say, well, Kingdom Hearts has a party and there's all kinds of cool aerial combos, so why can't Final Fantasy VII Remake have that? Well, the fundamental difference is that while there is a party, you only really play as Sora. And if you were given the option to play as these two, I mean, why would anyone ever pick this quack ass when you can just turn him into your bitch and make up for all of your shortcomings anyway? The point is, Sora is clearly the optimal character, so it makes sense to give him all of the abilities and make him a badass fucking god-hungry boy. In Final Fantasy VII Remake, you don't just play as Cloud. You play as Cloud, Barret, Tifa, Aerith, and soon-to-be Red 13, Yuffie, and Cait Sith. They all have to have particular strengths and weaknesses in order for a party dynamic to work. No jumping in Final Fantasy VII Remake isn't a negative thing. It's the secret key ingredient to what makes it so great.
might be a good spot to find some ingredients.
It's one part of what prevents it from becoming Kingdom Hearts, or Final Fantasy XVI, or other action games, and is an uncredited reason for why so many people who love the turn-based combat of the original still fell in love with this game's combat despite it having an action component to it. And jumping isn't just used to accentuate aerial combat, it's also a defensive maneuver. There are times in Kingdom Hearts where jumping allows you to dodge an enemy's attack. Final Fantasy VII Remake doesn't want you to dodge all of the attacks. That's why blocking doesn't completely negate damage. That's why dodging doesn't have invincibility frames. That's also why there is no jumping. They want you to put that cure materia to use as well as other buffs like barrier, because at its heart, Final Fantasy VII Remake is still a command game. And boy, is it refreshing to actually see some competent developers making AAA Final Fantasy games again. It would be really helpful if these goddamn bushes weren't obstructing my view.
Your attire,
Wait, so my party members can be transparent, but the bushes can't? So, even after watching this video, will people still complain that there's no jumping in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth? Yeah,